that you can as a reference to additional information. So I made this folder for you, and what I'm going to do is I will give it to Dr. Gurjaspreet Singh or someone to make copies, or also maybe I'll share with him soft copies so he can share whichever way he like. But so there are, इसमें अभी मैं जब lunch break के बाद में I was just going through these, इसमें से 2-3 हैं which are relevant to what we talked early in the morning. So anyway, I'll have, I think for all lectures, at least the ones that I'll be giving, I have related material that they are referenced in the latest publications or review articles that you can use as a reference, जो भी जो आपका interest है करते हैं. But that will give you a lot more कि latest क्या हो रहा है in each of these technologies, areas, discussion जो भी है. Okay. Thanks. So just to overview, okay, so we talk about, you'll see the way I have sequence of lectures is such, okay, because I was told mostly chemistry focused, chemistry based students, you do not get exposure to the biology side or things which are especially experimental therapeutics, chemical biology and all of that. So you'll see the way I have designed the lecture, they are in such a way that you will see the connectivity going from one to another, so that when you see the whole picture in front of you, you'll say, kuch to kaam ka tha. You see, so that's why you'll see. So abhi jo next, intentionally I have given the title for this, the bringing chemical solutions to biological problems. So chemical solution, tube light upar ho jati hai, okay, this we know. So I'll try to connect to the biological side, how and what is useful and how rest of the other fields than chemistry and how their applications and why their applications. So I'll be going up and down, make them basic fundamentals that you have seen, but ultimate goal is to connect you के biological side में उसका क्या application है. So if you look at a single unit, so remember I'll show you one of my slides again. I told you, to me, as I learned, periodic table is the building block of life, right? So think, for example, from atoms to molecules to cell to tissue to organ systems. This is how the complexity starts. So if we understand the fundamental, कि पहली ईंट जो है उसके गुण क्या हैं, there are imagine all those periodic table के जो हैं, उनकी अपनी individual properties क्या है. If you understand that, then we can brick by brick, you can build the castle, right? So basically what that is, we know. So I'll quickly run through, which you probably may have already, I'm pretty sure आपके earlier preliminary में लिया हो, but as I said, my goal is to connect you to the biological side. Okay, take chemistry, take all of these things to connect to the fundamentals biological side. So we know that atoms क्या है? I mean, we know that each element has a nucleus, has orbits, electrons, protons, depending on what that is. And as we know in the periodic table, the groups, the grouping, group 1, group 2, all of that is based on the number of electrons and protons which are outside. So we know that they have those properties. Those properties, proton, neutrons, each one has that, positive, negative, So going back to fundamental, that 1s2, 2s2, 2p, right? Then comes 3s2, 3p, 4, d orbital, right? So these orbitals make it. Each one has their property. So building from there, they connect, whether they connect or they don't connect. Again, depending on what their properties are, which one is, hydrogen has single electron, helium is a neutral gas, right? Helium, neon, उस periodic table, उस group में जितने भी हैं. So all of these, they have properties, and we can take advantage of their properties in order to build the blocks by blocks. So these, we know that helium with oxygen not going to work. Hydrogen with oxygen marks the living molecule, water. So these properties have been now, and that is simply giving, how protons, neutrons and key properties is leading to an element. And that is what leads to eventually to this, right? Periodic table, each जो है column, wo jo neutral gases we started non-reactive, highly reactive because they have one electron in the outer shell, right? And then their properties depending on what their polarity, which is from here. If you go to fluorine, the halogens are the most, right? Because they need only one electron to complete their octet. So these properties actually constitute the bigger atom. So now, as you'll probably next time when you see periodic table, you say कि वो life आ गई, so to speak, क्योंकि these properties make the molecules. All these are combination. Now there was another course that I was teaching a few years ago, and then I did this some analysis. Physical existence. There are 5 atoms or 6 atoms in this periodic table. They are the most abundant रचनाकार की रचना में. If you think of Earth, for example, hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur. Rest of those are in terms of, if you take the quantitative weight, if you take the Earth का जो weight है, including all the biological creation on the Earth, these 6 atoms are the ones which are more prevalent, and among these also, again I will repeat, ये creation की रचना है. Hydrogen, oxygen, 70% of the body weight is water, about H2O, right? Nitrogen, your amino acids. Without amino acids, you don't have oxygen, carbon. So NH2 on one side or NH3 on one side or COH on the other side. कितने हुए? NH, C and O. अब जितने मर्जी आप प्रोटीन उसमें अमीनो एसिड बना लें, आप ऊपर नीचे ऊपर को डेकोरेट ही करना है. उन अमीनो एसिड ने पेप्टाइड बनाने हैं. Those peptide will make the proteins will make the RNAs and the DNAs, right? Atoms तो चाहिए इस periodic table में, those are contributing. Think of all the biological creation. Then of course we have other, I'm talking about by weight. So the entire Earth का जो weight है, you can literally can see there are few molecules that actually constitute the larger biological creation. चाहे आप पत्ते देख लें, चाहे animals देख लें, चाहे humans देख लें. जो creation है, biological creation is around 6 or 8 of those, 6 more so, these atoms. And this all permutation combination. आप मैंने कहा अब इसके बाद में आप सोच के देखना जब आप कभी भी आपके सामने जब आए. Anything that you look at, even if you look at the structure of DNA or look at protein or simple amino acids or simple water, simple alcohol जो कि नहीं पीना चाहिए. So you look at all of these things, you will see that there are only handful of atoms which constitute that. So if you can understand the properties of those, you can better understand जो आपका बड़ा goal है, which is a bigger macromolecule, and then applications of macromolecules. They are so when I say understanding, how they are made, what their reactivity is, and how that reactivity has positive or negative effect. So घूम फिर के फिर वही आ गया chemistry, but understanding of that part is important. So now that is again slowly you look at this, for example. So simple atom. If you look at water, Earth, if you look at 70%, give or take 70% is what? Oceans. पानी है. Again those same creation. उस पानी के कारण ही ऑक्सीजन है. ऑक्सीजन की कितना लेवल जाता है कि इतने एनिमल्स जो हैं, जो एक्वाटिक एनिमल्स हैं, जीते हैं. हम ऊपर जो अर्थ के ऊपर रहने वाले एनिमल्स हैं उससे जीते करते हैं. So understanding that part may will have help. You look at carbon, we know their properties. 4 valencies, 4 atoms. Take that to bigger atoms. So if we understand how these reactivity is happening, how much they can react, what they can react, you see where I'm going with this? It will help us to understand how the peptides, उनकी reactivity कैसे design, how you can design new peptides, or how the peptides react depending on what is their bells and whistles. क्या substituents हैं, what their structures is, what their properties are, or you can manipulate their physiochemical property by designing new one. Just put a reactive group on one end, put another reactive group in the middle, put reactive group somewhere else, you can make a peptide which is reactive. You can keep on changing, you can play as a chemist, you have the advantage of, but the advantage comes by knowing the basic fundamental, knowing the properties of those things. But you see how knowing these properties now helps in biological molecules. So Bringing chemical solutions to biological part is again understanding the chemical part side of it. So see, I have, as you can see, this will be absolutely fundamental जो मैं आपको दिखा रहा हूँ. It's not that something I'm telling you is new. You know all these things already. You've seen this thing, but how? And then again, as we know the periodic table, as I just simply mentioned one point, halogens जो हैं फ्लोरीन, क्लोरीन, ब्रोमीन, आयोडीन, जितने उस periodic table उस column में हैं, their reactivity is different, right? Same way, different atoms, different columns. So now we can play with their reactivity. Most polar ionic potential, the highest ionic potential कौन सी atom की है? Fluorine. Same number of atoms but in a very compact, less orbitals, compact है 1s2 2s2 2p6, right? So उसमें 1s2 2s2 and then 2p5 एक ही चाहिए. तो कम स्पेस में 9 एटम्स 9 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स है. जैसे वो बढ़ता जाता है उसकी डेंसिटी पर साइज कम होती जाती है तो उसकी आयनिक पोटेंशियल चेंज होती जाती है. So knowing that thing, so the reason I specifically picked up fluorine is because fluorine you will see in the structure of many drugs. Also because fluorine is a small atom, compact small atom, the structures में इसलिए drugs में आता है कि maybe its property is such it can enter the biological pocket of the protein and can enter and go to the target site. So you can now design your drugs by introducing different atoms, playing and changing the physiochemical properties of the atoms. But again, going back to, if you have to solve a biological problem, we need to know what the solution, chemical solution can offer. So again, very fundamental. Now, if you have sodium chloride, right? Sodium chloride, simple molecule, right? Salt, sodium plus chlorine. एक के पास एक कम है, एक के पास एक ज़्यादा है, दोनों की फ्रेंडशिप है, they're highly reactive, right? Sodium has one extra electron, chlorine needs one electron, forms an electronic bond, ionic bonds, and that is how. And just imagine, salt नहीं होते तो क्या होता, हमारे टेस्ट का क्या होता, हमारे खानों का क्या होता. But that's one side of it. Sodium channel inside the human body, balancing. जो hypertension, BP higher, the first thing doctor will say, okay, नमक कम कर दो. So that छोटा सा atom क्यों इतना important है? Why is that so important? कि जी नमक कम कर दो आप थोड़ा, क्योंकि biological आपको जो cardio या जो neurological कुछ है, because your sodium channel, potassium channel जो है, there is something based on what we know. So, but as a chemist, knowing the property, what it can do, right? It gives you advantage. So now based on just few examples that I gave, think of now how the reactions are inside the human body. थोड़ी गर्मी लगती है. We are in summer weather. If you stand outside, प्यास लगने लगती है. Dehydration होता है. In remote areas, stand longer, जो स्ट्रेट धूप लगती है तो कल उसको लू ना लग जाए, बिकॉज डिहाइड्रेशन और सारा है ज़्यादा, राइट? उसको रिवर्स करने के लिए you hydrate yourself, right? There are enzymes inside which do this. So simple क्या है hydrolysis? Breakdown of molecules using water. And an enzyme की जब activity है, the hydrolases as group of enzymes are in many parts of the body. Different cells have that. Their functions vary from where they are depending on that, but hydrolases are very common, right? And so knowing those things, now you understand what the chemical reactions are, you understand the chemical properties are, and you understand how their reactions are important, their functions are important inside the human body. So let's expand even further. So अब जो चीज़ें पीनी खानी है, this is a very simplified version of few things which we regularly consume, right? अब देखिए उसका जो है, if you look at what is on the acidic side, which is on the basic side, उसका consumption जो है If you take those things inside, I give you simply one example of simply hydrolysis. I haven't talked about other enzymes. Simple, because hydrolysis is a very common reaction inside the human body. But see what happens from or unka pH, whatever their pH is of the items that we take. Now look on the right side, pH in various parts of the body. So, but in terms of reaction, I just talked about only hydrolysis. But how much just you see that simple reaction or simple eating, we may call it simple, but how complex all the machinery is going on just based on the hydrolysis reaction alone. You see how much difference it makes. So unka jo hai, understanding as a chemist or understanding the properties of those chemical reactions of those atoms and chemical reactions inside this is the most complex chemical machinery ever made, is human body. बाकी की chemical industry तो जो इंसान ने जितना समझ आया बनाने की कोशिश की है, ये जो है ये chemical industry है, it's a very big chemical plant. From every step, आप brain से लेके अपने foot तक देखिए, हर चीज़ में कोई ना कोई chemical reaction हो रही है, whether it's a pure chemical reaction, but this is again influenced by enzymes. So these are enzymatic but chemical reactions which are happening. So understanding how various these things that we intake, things which affect various parts of the body, is basically chemical reactions. So if we understand those, if you understand simple reaction, let's look at this for example. Now, biological buffers, acetate is a common thing which is used, right? These buffers, basically what they do, a protein and acidic side पे hydrogen निकलता है, that binds, it satisfies the buffer के साथ, given back and take enzymatic reaction होती है. And then again, if you look at that hydronic acid, again simple hydrogen in give and take, breaks it down to carbon dioxide and water. It's an enzymatic reaction that happened. But just imagine when you feel that you have acidity, right? Heartburn, quote unquote heartburn, bicarbonate soda लिया और पी लिया, था क्या? Is simply sodium bicarbonate. Simple sodium bicarbonate mixed in water. वही तो है, दो मॉलिक्यूल है. But that mix inside the water, the moment you take it, it breaks it down, it creates water and gas, it releases whatever is stuck up, आपको डकार आते हैं या जो भी होता है, that pressure is released. But what happened? It was a simple reaction that happened. So be able to understand how these things happen, how it works. We take advantage of trying to create solutions for those. So look at now biological molecules. So क्या है? I mean, if you look at the biological polymer molecules, if we look at, so let me take you to the next. There are 4 classes of molecules. You know all of those. I'm just bringing those together. Carbohydrates, sugar, and different forms of carbohydrates. So हम लेते हैं different type of glucose, sugar, sucrose, mannose, maltose. जितने भी हैं, there are 20 plus. In one form or the other, we consume those, right? So those are biological. Fats, fatty acids are part of the body. In the creation, in our food, they are there. Proteins, nucleic acids are the main polymers, which are biopolymers, which are inside the body. But basically, simple 4 molecules, jinki reactivity is that simple. Those who are affected by this simple chemistry, now I will reverse and go in the other direction. 1, 2, and 3. See how many processes inside the body they affect. Look at the protein, for example. Proteins are inside the whole cells. Protein concentration is affecting. lipids, fatty acids, right? Carbohydrates, we have, as you can see, I have looked at these. They make these molecules, the 5 dotted lines, alliginates, for example, carrageenes, flucoides, all these are, and vitamins, nucleic acids. 4 basic fundamental biopolymer. Inside they create these molecules. Now look at their functions, their methods, their function कहाँ से होता है? They create cell disruption के अंदर, they have their roles. Mechanical functioning के अंदर, chemical reaction, enzymatic reaction, whether look at the physical, and then again enzymatic reaction जो वहाँ I have listed. But all are these processes which are inside this chemical plant. 4 different types of only biopolymers that I mentioned, and they are affected by enzymatic reactions. Those enzymatic reactions are influenced by simple molecules, simple acids and water inside the water. Water is there is a reason nature has created water, has put water inside the human body, because those solubility of those molecules taking and crossing where cell lines, cell walls, from one type of cell walls to another, to organs, to from plasmas to tissues, it facilitates, right? So, but if you break it down to, they are very simple molecules. So if we understand those, we can look at that and see how they react. So look at the chemistry part, for example. Carbohydrates, saccharides, monosaccharide, disaccharides, polysaccharides. Basically, they are linkers. From oxygen to carbon to hydrogen, they are basically linkers. Those linkers are connecting. So you can understand, if you know the chemical reaction of where these reactions are happening and how their reaction is happening, you can design various biological solutions. You can create artificial carbohydrates. You can create artificial, there are many now, which are there. But again, it brings down to breaking down to those understanding of the chemical structure, their properties, so that can help you to understand the molecules which already exist, or to design molecules which could be used as substitute. हमने उसका नाम तो काफ़ी सुना है, artificial sugar, right? So कार्बोहाइड्रेट, उसका डिज़ाइन थोड़ा बदल दिया, हमने अपने स्वीटनेस का तो बढ़ा लिया कि उसका मीठा ज़्यादा हो गया. We do not know the negative side of it, and therefore if you go back and look into the literature, there is tons and tons of, there are thousands and thousands of papers which have been published for the positive and negative of the artificial sugar. कि उसके जो sweeteners जो आते हैं, sweeteners के positive and negative, but basically है कि it's a simple carbohydrate molecule which has been modified. But to be able to understand that will be helpful in order to solve the solution, to create a solution and solve the problem. Now, why am I mentioning this? Carbohydrates, I started with carbohydrates, sugar, मीठा खाते हमें taste देता है, not just the taste but inside the body, it, the fats converted, you eat a lot of sugar, converted to fat, you create a lot of functions, go to gym, muscles बनाए, converted to fat, to muscles, but that conversion is, all of these are chemical reactions, right? So for example, energy function, ATP ADP जो conversion है, right? That जो energy machinery जो inside the cell है, ATP ADP, that conversion that happens. So what happens? This now from cells to tissue, basically these are polymers only, they are connected in one or the other form, right? I've shown that picture of cellular structure on the right. So but they are connected carbohydrates. So see, from simple molecules to biopolymers to biomolecules, now they are part of what creates your tissues inside the body. So if we are trying to understand how a drug or a therapy is created, we need to understand what is the function of, what is the makeup of that tissue. If you are interested, अगर आपने wound healing करनी है, तो आप अल्जाइमर की तो टेस्ट नहीं करेंगे ना, वुंड हीलिंग का ही टेस्ट ढूंढना पड़ेगा. तो यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड हाउ दैट वुंड का जो स्किन है वो बनी कैसे है, उसमें कितने तरह के सेल्स हैं, व्हाट आर द स्ट्रक्चर, हाउ दे आर मेड, व्हाट आर हाउ मेनी डिफरेंट लेयर्स. बट व्हाट दैट ब्रिंग्स डाउन बॉइल्स डाउन टू इज how that structure was created. And then you can create different solutions by creating artificial, these processes. But in terms of energy, again, as you can see, these carbohydrates, these glycogens, for example, that's the storage space for polysaccharides in biological creation. So understanding the functions of carbohydrates, now you can just imagine understanding the function, utility, breaking down of those is basically chemistry, but its application is what is happening inside the animal body. So you can create those creations. Now fats, for example, lipids, right? The fats, fatty acids are basically what? As you look at the linkers, those are fatty acids. Simple. Again, as I was telling you, look at fatty acids, there are only 4 atoms: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Actually only 3 atoms: carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Now you see how much fatty acid does various different types of functions inside the cell, inside the human body. So, but it's basically what? Simple. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. So if you can understand the properties, so now you see how I started with the oxygen and H2O, or carbon having four valencies. If we can understand their properties, if we can understand their reactivity, we can better understand the various parts of the cell, various makeup, what is the makeup of the cell, various biopolymers, what those are, how they react, how we can combine, mix and match, what creates a cell, what creates a tissue, what creates a bigger organs, and within those organs, if there are various layers, what each layer is made of. And when you break it down, when you go, they are basically come down to basic atoms or small molecules. So if we can understand those, we can apply. So जितने भी आप टेस्ट अगर आप देखते हैं, टेस्टिंग के जो हैं, whether it's a sugar test, BP का टेस्ट है, या जितने भी टेस्ट हैं, diagnostic in general, basically what it is that understanding how these molecules behave under whatever condition is of the assay is. And now this then see, if we combine all of these things together, it now multiple layers. So take glycerol, for example, right? Fatty acid, and I have given you the structure of glycerol. When you have glycerol have 3 different places: simple hydrocarbon, reactivity with 3 fatty acids. It starts to now build a layer. It starts to bring some creation inside the cell. But going back to, because you are chemist, I am emphasizing again back, simple atoms make molecules, make biomolecules, and then you can, fatty acid itself is a bigger molecule than water and alcohol and simple molecule amino acids, right? But when these are coupled together, it now becomes fatty layer. Now fatty layer, various parts of the body has different functions, or makeup might be different. There could be hundreds and different types of fatty layers that were formed, but usko break it down to, they are basically fatty acid. Fatty acids are basically, as you look at the structure, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. There are only 3 atoms. Only 3 atoms. Now just imagine कितनी जगह पे fatty acid human body में है. It's only hydrogen, carbon and oxygen. So if we can understand those, you can better understand how the human body is made up, right? So that is where again the advantage as a chemist we have is we can break it down to simple atoms and then start building on top of that, bring it back to the larger molecules. But then again, you need to understand the connectivity, you need to understand. So therefore, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun building the blocks together. वो आपने You know, kids play those Legos and mix and match. These are Legos. These are Legos of the chemists. But it's a lot of fun. But then because now it's not just making molecules. Now you